Okay, now, folks, talk about your programs, the different elements of your programs. We'll begin with Keith and John.
Okay. Hi, it's me again. I had everyone a brochure with a copy of it. And the Freedom Project, AVP was introduced John Marshall Rosenberg, that founder of Freedom Project, Nonviolent Communication, Mindfulness Training, turning prisoners to peacemakers, come by way through the AVP. A lot of people don't know the history of it. What we do, dealing with reentry. Okay, we're talking about reentry today. Reentry, some people hear reentry and think reentry is this big, global thing, and it's just technical. But really, it's the basics. John spoke about it on his panel this morning. It's the basics when we're talking about coming out and transitioning back into the community. It's reentering society. And like he said this morning, it's employment. The critical things that we're dealing with is employment, housing, and the emotional support. But then there's one last element that we deal with. I spoke with at a symposium Harold Clark allowed me to go to when I was actually working with, and it's an addiction. And in life, what a lot of guys are dealing with a drug addiction. As Bob was saying at the end, we're fortunate here in the state of Washington that the Secretary, by way of Harold Clark, they made history this year and allowed myself, John, and two other guys to go back into the system. I go to Monroe 5 days a week as an ex-felon on supervision, which is unheard of. It's against policy and everything, but they made an exception to the rule to try to allow us to go back in and teach each other and give back and show a kind of like a success story to show guys that it is a way out here in the community. That Monday morning I'm going to share this with the guys at Monroe. That on Sunday on a 3-4 day at the end of this week into this weekend, that in Bellingham, Washington, sitting off in this beautiful area with the sun shining, there's a group of good people out here that are meeting around our lives. And as John said this morning, it takes a miracle to come out here and be successful, because there's so many barriers in the way, because the tools are not being offered. And so what we do with the reentry, with the Freedom Project, I just came on board with the Freedom Project as the program manager. We're creating a mentoring program. And it's going to be a volunteer program. We just introduced it to the Department of Corrections, so there's no finances involved. It's going to be voluntarily from people in the community, and we're going to do it 6 months in, 6 months out. It's going to be like kind of a life coach thing. We felt this would be a way to provide an emotional support when they come out the door. We're trying to get them to bend the rules a little bit on that, because we spoke with Eldon Veld and the social superintendent of Monroe, and what we're probably going to run into is, if you connect inside with an inmate, you're not allowed to connect with him on the outside. So we're trying to find a way to get around that there, because this is what needed as a part of re-entry. We're trying to give it to them in the re-entry form, because as we know, re-entry, that is the most important. That's the most important step to come out, re-enter society. And like when you said this morning, when you step out the door, if there's no one there, then that starts off with frustration and irritation, and it leads to the other things, because you feel no one's there for you. There's no emotional support. I was fortunate to be introduced to the Freedom Project through Dow Gordon and the Village of Hope through Willie Williams, because I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I have no family in the state of Washington. So I was very fortunate. I put in a lot of the workshops to use when I was in there. You talking about the basic workshop this morning, how the big, you sit in the basic workshop and like, oh, okay, yeah. And then when the vans come, you're like, whoa, and it just hit you. And so, but a lot of guys do want to change their life when it comes to this here. So I think that the reentry, what the Freedom Project does, is we offer support in every area, whether it's employment. Daily I go look for transitional housing to see who's eligible, who's not eligible, who fit the criteria. I use myself as a tool for applying for jobs, and as we call it, to be felony friendly, because a lot of guys can walk in a Fred Meyer and apply for a job, and they can say that a Fred Meyer doesn't hire felons, ex-felons, and it discourages a guy. So if we can provide in this quest of reentry, here's a listing of jobs that will hire felons, ex-felons, that gives a guy enough confidence. And then what we also do in the form of the reentry is to teach guys how to do job applications, resumes. Sometimes they never in their life heard of a resume. They don't see one. So when you go to some places, you might go get a job application and it's like a little booklet. And this can be discouraging. And this is where the mentor program comes in that, under the umbrella of the reentry. And then we even do mock interviews. So we try to get the guys prepared in this reentry to come back out here and be a productive citizen in society. Because I mean, it's out there, but it is, like John says, it is hard. There's a lot of barriers. And sometimes it can be a bit much for a guy. But if he has a life coach, just say, if any one of you guys in here was a life coach to a guy, you know, and the guy, every time you leave the county, to come to Bellingham, Washington this morning, I have to call and report. I'm leaving King County. And I have to call and say I'm back. And which I'm okay with that. I'm okay. That's part of the rules. That's part of the policy that's been set forth. So with this, that's part of my reentry. And like I said, I was very fortunate to be. I'm very grateful to be through Martha, to be invited to come here and sit and speak with you guys today about reentry, because it's very important. And I'm going to share with you guys, like I say, what's going on right now, because a lot of guys don't know, a lot of guys don't know, because they can hear reentry, and nothing is ever put up on the table. We do a class called Life Strategies training in Monroe. This is what we do 5 days a week. And we go in, it's based on changes inside jobs by Gordon Graham, that does Breaking Bread, if you ever heard of him. We do Attitudes is Everything, a module, a week of training on Attitudes is Everything by Keith Farrell. And we do the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, like, Stephen Covey. Okay, so we take those 3 modules and we do it 3 weeks, and it's ex-felons sitting with felons. And I let the guys know that we all have the same thing in common, and that's getting out and being successful. And that's getting out, and all the guys we're working with now are guys that are on violation, because in the state of Washington, the violation thing is a big thing that the community at large are not even aware of. But I mean, if the Department of Corrections deem the FERS out in front out there to be what they call a solar zone, and a guy on supervision is standing out there, he's immediately taken back to Monroe. And let's try this again. And so we try to get guys to understand that there is just like people that have never been in prison before, there's laws of the land. There's no speed, there's things that you can't do, so there's things that we have to abide by here, just like we do inside a prison. But you spoke this morning also about that structure. When we leave that environment, in most cases when we come out into the community, if we're trying to make better of our lives, like I said, the frustration sets in. A lot of guys run back to what they know best, and that's the streets. You know, the street corners. They're getting high, they're drinking, they're risk taking again. A good friend of mine, he called this morning late, but I didn't know what the phone was cut off by, on lunch, I looked at it. But he was sentenced in 1997 to 21 years in prison for drug charges. And 5990 came out in 2003. They just called him out the blue. He had guys beating the door down, asking about halftime. They just called him out the blue and said, "You qualified for halftime." Took 10 years off his sentence. And they released him last month, a month ago, and I went and picked him up. And today, he's in Fort Lauderdale with 9 counts. When he came out with the Freedom Project, I told him, come on down to the community circle, get involved. Because that there keeps the mind going, and keep you in a positive frame of mind. But somehow, when he was trying to get the job, he couldn't find a job, he's looking. But then some of the jobs, some guys now, I'm showing them jobs that we know for a fact in the state of Washington, if anybody, you guys know, in the state of Washington, Jiffy Lube would hire anybody. But I told my buddy about this, but it's $9 an hour. And that didn't set too well with him. I said, well, you're just making $50 a month in the penitentiary. You don't want $9 an hour? But he got frustrated, and he turned to something else. And he really tried something with some guys that out there, that's on the street corners. They drove down to Port Oregon, and turns out the Mother's Day, he was arrested. And now he has to face the consequences in Oregon, and of course, Washington State sitting there with them. And so, and that's why we feel with this reentry is so important for us to get our mentor program up and off the ground, to be going with these guys, to help out, because guys said, I tell them, Monica, I wish I could videotape the trouble in the morning. It would be nice to just show the guys, to show them some of the DOC officials, to really see. We talk about how the garage and how even some of them know that I'm on. But That's what we do.